Hello and welcome to my channel again. Today we are going to talk about understanding the brain cells, which is neurons and glial cells. The human brain is a marvel of complexity comprised of billions of specialized cells known as neurons and glial cells. These cells work together to process information, transmit signals and support the overall function of the nervous system. In this detailed exploration, we will delve into the intricate structure, diverse functions, and crucial roles of neurons and glial cells in the brain. First is neurons. Structure of neurons. Neurons, often referred to as nerve cells, are the primary functional units of the nervous system. They are specialized for transmitting electrical signals and processing information. Each neuron consists of several specialized components, each with a specific function. First is cell body. The cell body or soma is the central part of the neuron and contains the nucleus and other organelles necessary for the cell's metabolic activities and maintenance. Next is dendrites. Dendrites are branching extensions that extend from the cell body and receive signals from other neurons or sensory receptors. They serve as input sites for receiving synaptic inputs from neighboring neurons and increasing the neuron's surface area for synaptic connections. Next is axon. The axon is a long, slender projection that extends from the cell body and transmits electrical impulses known as action potentials away from the cell body toward other neurons, muscles, or glands. Next is axon terminals. At the end of the axon, there are specialized structures called axon terminals or synaptic buttons. These structures form synaptic connections with other neurons or target cells, allowing for the transmission of signals across synapses. Next is the function of neurons. Neurons play several crucial roles in the nervous system, each essential for the overall functions of the brain. First is signal transmission. Neurons transmit electrical signals known as action potentials along with their axons to communicate with other neurons or target cells. These signals allow for the rapid transmission of information throughout the nervous system. Next is the information processing. Neurons integrate incoming signals from multiple sources such as sensory receptors or other neurons to generate appropriate responses. This process of information processing occurs primarily in cell body and dendrites. Next is synaptic communication. Neurons communicate with one another at specialized junction called synapses. Neurotransmitters released from the presynaptic neuron bind to receptors on the postsynaptic neuron, transmitting signals across the synaptic gap and facilitating communications between the neurons. Next is neural plasticity. Neurons exhibit plasticity, the ability to modify their structure and function in response to experience, learning, and environmental stimuli. This plasticity underlies processes such as memory formation, learning, and neural development. Now let's talk about the types of neurons. Neurons can be classified into several types based on their structure, function, and connectivity. First is sensory neurons. Sensory neurons, also known as afferent neurons, transmit information from sensory receptors such as those for touch, vision, or smell to the central nervous system. These neurons plays a crucial role in detecting environmental stimuli and relaying sensory information to the brain. Next is motor neurons. Motor neurons or efferent neurons carry the signals from CNS, which is central nervous system, to muscles or glands, controlling voluntary and involuntary movements and physiological responses. They transmit commands from brain or spinal cord to effector organs, initiating muscle contractions or glandular secretions. Next is interneurons. Interneurons, also known as association neurons, form connections between sensory and motor neurons within the central nervous system. They facilitate information processing and integration by relaying signals between the different regions of the brain or spinal cord. Now next, let's talk about glial cells. First, structure of glial cells. Glial cells, also known as neuroglia or simply glia, are non-neuronal cells that provide support, protection and nourishment to neurons. There are several types of glial cells in the brain, each with specific functions and characteristics. First is astrocytes. Astrocytes are star-shaped cells that are the most abundant glial cells in the central nervous system. They play essential roles in regulating the chemical environment around neurons, maintaining the blood-brain barrier, and providing structural support to the nervous tissue. Next is oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes are glial cells responsible for producing myelin, a fatty substance that wraps around axons to insulate and enhance the speed of the electrical signal transmission. In the central nervous system, oligodendrocytes form myelin sheaths around multiple axons, while in the peripheral nervous system, Schwann cells perform a similar function. Next is microglia. Microglia are the resident immune cells of the central nervous system derived from specialized macrophages of the immune system. They act as a primary immune defense in the CNS, surveying the brain for pathogens, toxins or cellular damage and initiating immune responses when necessary. Next is ependymal cells. Ependymal cells line the fluid-filled cavities of the brain and spinal cord, forming a barrier between the cerebrospinal fluid and the neural tissue. They play a role in producing and regulating CSF, which is cerebrospinal fluid, and helping to circulate it throughout the CNS. Next is functions of glial cells. Glial cells perform a variety of essential functions in the central nervous system, supporting and maintaining the health and the function of neurons. Next is metabolic support. Glial cells provide neurons with metabolic substrates such as glucose and lactate for energy production and neurotransmitter synthesis. They also help regulate the extracellular ion concentrations and pH levels, contributing to overall neuronal function. Next is neuronal protection. Glial cells contribute to the repair and regeneration of damaged neurons as well as the removal of cellular debris and toxic substances from the extracellular environment. Astrocytes in particular form a protective barrier around neurons and help maintain the tissue homeostasis. Next is synaptic function. Astrocytes play a critical role in regulating the synaptic transmission by modulating the neurotransmitter levels, uptake and recycling at the synaptic cleft. They also provide structural support to synapses and they help regulate the synaptic plasticity, the ability of synapses to strengthen or weaken over time. Next is immune response. Microglia act as a primary immune defense in the central nervous system, monitoring the brain for signs of infection, inflammation or injury. They respond to pathogens, toxins or cellular damage by migrating to the site of injury and initiating immune responses to protect and repair neural tissue. Next is the significance of brain cells. Neurons and glial cells are the fundamental components of the nervous system, playing critical roles in cognition, behavior and physiological function. Their intricate interactions and network forms the basis of neural circuits responsible for sensory perception, motor control, memory, emotion and higher order cognitive functions. Understanding the structure and function of the brain cells is essential for elucidating the mechanisms of brain disorders, developing the treatments and advancing neuroscience research. So in summary, neurons and glial cells are the building blocks of the nervous system, working together to process the information, transmit signals and support the brain function. Neurons transmit electrical signals and communicate through synapses, while glial cells provide structural, metabolic and immune support to neurons.